artist, she's a photographer, she's a framer. She didn't put artist in her bio, and I don't know why, but we'll talk about that later. She's an artist, she's a photographer, and when it came to speaking on the topic of endurance, it made complete sense that someone who herself has had to endure to come to the creative practice that she's found now, and also has dedicated that creative practice to documenting and telling stories of some of the most challenged and enduring communities in our city. I could think of no one better than Farrah Skeiky to speak on endurance today at Creative Mornings. Please come and take the stage. I can also click for you if you want.
I want to click.
Okay.
Click.
Click away.
I would like to click. Click, 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 click. I don't, oh, you know what? Look at that. Is it on? Yes. Okay, amazing. We all need friends. Obi mentioning the artist part. We are going to get to that. Do you like the teeth whitening I gave myself in this photo? I did not realize how aggressive it was. My dental assistant mom said, you look fantastic. That's what your teeth should look like. Now I'm like, dang. I appreciate everybody being here this morning, and this feels like a very on-the-nose topic right now. I know a lot of people are really deeply feeling that in this moment. I'm right there with you. Very sleep-deprived, but very excited to be here. And that is kind of what all of this is about, is showing up when we do not feel like it. We're gonna get like 2009, 2010, so like not baby, but like fairly baby. I'm with my high school friend Annie. We are at the 930 Club seeing Chromeo, and this Japanese band, the Susan, is opening. I feel like they just played the Chromeo Endurance. There you go. In my hand is a very okay camera bag from Target with my very first digital camera, which was a Canon Rebel. I snuck it into the venue, which you're not supposed to do, but this was kind of the start for me of getting excited about photographing music. It had started kind of at home and with friends. My dad had been the family documentarian. When he got sick, I kind of became the family documentarian. I was the kid who had the camera with them everywhere at school their senior year. Like, you do not need to be photographing people at lunch, sitting like in the hallway, but I was. You do not need to be photographing every moment of like what your baby cousin is doing in your house, but I'm very excited that I did that. Very grateful to myself for doing that. And let me tell you the journey my photography has gone on. I'm going to show you the first photos I took with a press pass. They're not good. They're very not good. But the intent is there. I'm roasting myself in advance so we can all laugh about it. I also didn't write a whole lot down for this. I'm letting my slides guide me. But my first photo pass was for a website that stuck around DC for a very long time. It was called Bright as Young Things. And the show was at the Black Cat. I got there 2 hours early because I didn't know what the heck I was doing and how any of this worked. And I went to the table, Black Cat, like, I am on the list. And they're like, okay, calm down. This is the Black Cat. This is the Black Cat, child. Chill out. To me, it was like the coolest thing that ever happened. I wasn't allowed to go to the Black Cat as a kid. And my mom was like, it's crazy over there. And then I was like, there's a Whole Foods there now. She was like, bet. Sounds good. And we're going to get into that Whole Foods later. I hope they're not sponsoring anything or you're not pursuing their sponsorships. This show was Lemuria, Against Me, and Screaming Females. I think I was a week out from 21. So I was, as I said, baby. So here's my photos of Screaming Females in 2011. It's rough. We can laugh. It's okay. I don't like them either. I look at these and I showed the band the other day. They're like, dang, I'm glad we didn't see those back then. And here are my photos of Marissa from that same band, who just got a Rolling Stone like list of best guitarists of all time, like 150 out of 250, playing at Wind Up Space in Baltimore. And that is like a 4-year difference. My favorite thing about this band, they're not DC based, but they have so much to do what I'm about to talk about, is this band has been a band for like almost 20 years. It's like 3 kids from New Brunswick, New Jersey, making rock songs and making stupid jokes all the time, to the point where now they headline and run their own festival that has no corporate sponsors, is multiple days, incorporates like lots of local makers in the town that they're involved in. So for me, I feel really honored that I have gotten to like grow alongside this band, and I kind of use them as a metric or to kind of like a landmark for like my own growth, watching them grow throughout the years. And seeing a band that tours like so aggressively endure through COVID, festivals and gathering spaces enduring through COVID, enduring through half of the Bandcamp team, like daily team, just got axed because like a big ass company bought them, and that's crazy. I promise there's a point to all of this rambling, but I am also rambling. I should not have drank that Celsius. We're going places now. We're going places. Oh, they told me connection lost. Do I just hit play again? Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Amazing. I had always wanted to make images like this one, and the one in the previous slide of Marissa Paternoster as well. She's also a really incredible visual artist. If you've not seen her work, you should check it out. So talented. But one of the reasons I had always wanted to make work like this, and I don't know if he's here, but previous Creative Mornings speaker, Jim Saw. This is a photo of Minor Threat, I think like early 80s. My favorite thing about this photo is, unless you know like Ian and Minor Threat, this photo you can't really tell like who's in the band and who's in the crowd. The night belongs to everybody is what I like to say about the kind of shows that I like to shoot. The night belongs to everybody. The stage, the line of like between stage and audience to me is like, it's just a cute suggestion. I remember I listened to Jim's talk while I was getting ready for this one. He talked about the fact that like the kids were really doing it the way they wanted to do it. The kids were getting around, like the venue's worried about kids underage drinking. Like, we'll mark our own hands up with X's. We'll make this shit happen on our own terms. Can I curse? Sorry. I'm gonna try not to, but it might happen. I'm sorry. But it's an energy exchange. Like you can't be giving it to them on stage and like give your all if the people in the crowd are just. And we see that here a lot. I need DC to step it up crowd-wise. But this photo Jim took in the 80s has influenced me so much. And you can see that very clearly. This photo I took of Turnstile at St. Stephen's Church in 2016, 2017. I don't even remember the year. I love this photo. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo? Like I see a bunch of people I know, like, oh, there they are. Oh, I forgot that they were there that day. Their hair looks nice in this photo. It's the same kind of thing. The energy is, everybody in the room is responsible for the energy. People in this photo like care about the music that is happening in their community. People in this space are so excited about these songs. They want that singer to know, I know the words. I'm gonna tell you I know the words. Let me show you how loudly I know these words. A community like DC Punk, DC Hardcore doesn't endure without enthusiasm. It doesn't endure without youth. It doesn't endure without people who actually care. Like there's not really a lot of room for being too cool to do any of this. And we'll get into that. But this photo happened in, you know what, maybe it wasn't St. Stephen's Church. It was another church in Columbia Heights, but it happened in a church space. This photo is in the basement of the Pinch. Also doesn't exist anymore. There's a lot of that. Again, I'm kind of like rambling and freestyling here, and I hope y'all will stick with me. And again, I love pointing the camera at the crowd because we're all responsible for that energy. So, bless you. These are the kind of photos I've loved to make for a really long time. A little bit more of that. But now I'm also at a point where I get to make photos like this. Thundercat was amazing last night, but this is an old photo. Like this. And the most important part of this for me is I am not just spectating when it comes to photographing punk and DIY culture in DC. Here are a few photos from the band Homo Superior. And oh, hey, that's me. I got into it. This is a scene that has endured a lot in DC. A lot of the photographs I'm showing you are in spaces that don't exist anymore for a variety of reasons. Punk culture is not meant to be profitable. people are doing this because they love it, because this is how they express themselves with their friends. This is how they take up space and make space in a world that doesn't really seem to care about like making space for the counterculture, because counterculture is usually not profitable. It's kind of crazy to say that because that first band turnstile is like very profitable right now. We're very, very happy for them. But most of these spaces, most of these shows happening in spaces that are, not conventional spaces. Like thinking like I feel like the only places I know of a church and punk show go together are here in Philadelphia. I was really invested in photographing punk in DC because people talked about it as something that happened in the past tense. I would get on an Uber out of a plane in another city, and people go, yeah, that you guys used to have some bands. And I'd be like, I was at the show last night. Like, there were like 5 bands, which is too many for a show. I'm so sorry. I don't want to see 5 bands in one night. I'm 33. But again, punk is youth culture, so maybe I'm just getting old. But I saw a show last night. 5 bands. 4 of them were local. People got there early for the openers because they want to support their friends. The people in the crowd are not always random strangers. You are seeing each other show up for like each other's bands and that kind of thing. That led me to February 29th, 2020, crazy time in the world, putting out a photo called Present Tense, or a photo book called Present Tense, which is 5 years of photographing DC punk and DIY, really, really aggressively. Like going way too many shows, probably not sleeping enough, definitely not taking care of myself. That was not a priority because I was really tired of people talking about this thing that had happened in DC as if it was just like minor threat and bad brains. And it was really important to me to make this work to show people that like things have come a long way since that minor threat photo that I showed you from Jim. You don't have to hunt for the people of color in the photos anymore because they are there. We are here. There are people who are more visibly signaling as queer in these photos because they have also had to endure to show up in those spaces that maybe were not always friendly for them. A lot of the photos I've shown you are from shows where people of color, women, queer folks have made their own punk spaces because the main spaces in the counterculture were not cutting it for them. And so we're seeing less and less of non-cishet white dudes being in support roles like photographer, booker, zine maker, and taking the mic and taking the stage more. Not that those are not all very valuable roles to fill. My favorite part of the book is I had a show for it at a space that has really endured, that literally was created in the middle of an alleyway between 2 businesses, which is Transformer. That is like the whole space. I feel like, are y'all familiar with Transformer? I feel like that has to be a thing. That place has been there for 17 years on the same block as the Whole Foods. That's crazy. It's literally an alleyway that got built out into an art gallery. I cannot think of anything that is a better example of like endurance or punk spirit in DC as that. A big part of punk culture is collecting. I'm gonna roast my husband a little bit because he's not here, but there is a punk philosophy where you buy a t-shirt from a band called, you buy one to rock, you buy one to stock. So my closet is full of a lot of t-shirts and half of them do not get worn. But the other thing we have a lot of in our house are cassette tapes. I remember doing a talk at the MLK Library. That was a punk and go-go talk back in 2014, 2015. And I was telling the host of Go-Go Radio Live that like this is the thing that we do. Like this is from 2014, 2015. It's a compilation of young DC hardcore bands called the Red Line Comp. You can see the cute little Red Line Metro outline over there. I really like that. Preserving that culture through physical items is something that has, I think, really kept it going. Finding t-shirts from like a show from the 80s or a band from the 80s. And still getting excited about what it looks like, or people who, like my husband, obsess over like what kind of shirt it was printed on and what kind of ink they used and all that kind of stuff. And oh, well, this was from the tour, but that was online. And like, you want to get the one from the tour. You don't want to get the one that was just like on the web store. That's not as cool. The collector culture is really strong. I feel like it's like the most materialistic, capitalistic thing about punk that connects it to, a mainstream is buying things, wanting to buy things, wanting to collect things. And I know a bunch of people have this comp, but they do not have a cassette player. I'm gonna be real with you. I only got a cassette player again like 3 years ago because I was like, I want to listen to this. I haven't listened to this since like I lived with an old roommate who had a cassette player. But that is to say, I've spent a lot of time photographing, documenting a community that I am part of that is not meant to be profitable, and for that reason is struggling to endure. So now we're going to talk about what is allowed to endure. There's so many ways we could take this word, right? Like we could think about a tortoise and a hare scenario, like the endurance of that. We could think about legacy. I'm going to start with something that I am less connected to, but is still really important to me and to all of us. But here we have the Howard student who started the Don't Mute DC hashtag. Go-go culture in DC is something that like we hear about used to happen, and there's still go-go bands, they're still active, but when people talk about going to the go-go's, going to the events, that has not been supported because it has been it's been a community space. It has not necessarily been profitable for the city in the same way that maybe a bigger, more established venue, like a Ticketmaster kind of concert would be profitable for a city. So it's been very easy to be like dismissed for a while instead of being like, oh, this is like a culture that makes people want to move here kind of thing. It's been just similar to punk. It's been talked about as an artifact in some capacities. And when it isn't documented I really believe when something isn't documented as heavily, what are you going to say and show to the people who don't really care if this lasts or not? And say, hey, we are here. We have like a physical record of us being here. You need to support this community, right? There's this idea that like to keep up with the times, you have to find a way to make the thing that you're doing profitable so that people will get on board. But I don't know a lot of people who make punk music to be profitable. I don't know a lot of people who have go-go nights that are all ages where people post up in front of like a really great backdrop with their friends and go have a good night in a safe place that's very much all ages in the spirit of punk shows as well, that are doing it to necessarily be extremely profitable, except for just having a space for community. This is from, again, I'm forgetting this is the band Priests, RIP, playing at Best World Supermarket in Mount Pleasant. And you might be wondering, why are they playing at Best World Supermarket in Mount Pleasant? Because they didn't want a CVS to go in, because they want the landlord of the building to help the owners of the store get the help they need making repairs, taking care of their store, staying in the community. I have gone into that store so many times and found West African ingredients for cooking. I found Korean ingredients. I found a little bit of everything in there. And thinking about like a Mount Pleasant kind of scenario, like I don't think there's a CVS still. I know we're talking a lot about CVS right now. That was a complete coincidental. I'm not trying to engage in that discourse. But the fact that a punk band, a mariachi band, and a post-punk band that night all played at this grocery store to raise funds, raise awareness for the fact that the existing community that is there is not getting the financial support it needs to continue. The city's not putting pressure on landlords to help take care of the current tenants. They're kind of like backing off and saying like, okay, well, good luck. If you stick it out, great. If not, we'll put a CVS in there. We'll put a coffee shop chain in there. It makes it a lot harder for a place to stick around and be able to advocate for itself when you are constantly in a state of repair and not getting what you need. It's very hard to stand up for yourself when you're having trouble keeping your store standing. It's very hard to stand up for yourself in that kind of environment. This is going back to the era of Jim Sauce photo. This is a part of a project by our friend Carney called Visualizing Fugazi. Carney is a data scientist who created art based on the data visualizations of the band Fugazi and that era of music in DC. This is a chart of how much money this band had raised for different causes in their lifetime. So we have youth outreach, women's shelters, anti-drug war, prison issues, housing and homelessness, community radio, health clinics, and they played 80 benefit shows, most of them in DC, $250,000 that one band's shows raised over their span as a band. And that is a legacy that still keeps up in DC, which I really deeply appreciate. I think one of the reasons punk has been able to endure in DC is because there has been a community focus for the majority of the time. I've just so many shows in my life that are bring a donation. It's a suggested donation at the door. It is the merch cuts are being sold to support a cause. This was from 2017. Two bands from the area, Majority Rule and Page 99, played maybe 3 or 4 shows in a week and raised $6,000 for various causes in each city that they played in. We use so many community spaces in punk to keep it alive. So giving back to the communities that are allowing us to make a stage out of their grocery store or their church is a really central part of this. I have photographed a lot of punk shows in houses. I have, this is literally a house the landlord finally kicked everybody out of. I'm not telling you what it is. This was at a community center in Mount Pleasant, providing social services to folks. This is another benefit show for that community center. It's really hard to keep your community going when you're running out of space, right? This is a photo of RIP, another great DC punk band, Pure Disgust, playing at Union Arts. Does anybody remember Union Arts? All right. Oh, now we're going to talk about it. Not Whole Foods, something else. Union Arts was a very large building on 411 New York Avenue that really, really close to here, where over 100 DC artists were, some living, some working, hosting shows. Again, lots of benefits, lots of open studio kind of events. It was a really affordable space to be an artist in DC, and we are running low on those spaces repeatedly. A lot has happened to Union Arts. It doesn't exist anymore. And I remember seeing artists in the city rise up against that. Not calling out any one developer, because there's been 3 different developers that have taken turns saying, we'll have an arts hotel. We'll have 10 artist studios. We'll have an artist in residence program. But that company gets to decide whose art is okay for their business that has a bottom line, whereas the artists who were taking up the space before were not necessarily concerned about profitability other than staying alive, being able to make a living being an artist. Slight rant. Has anybody seen the Netflix series This Is Pop? Okay, great series, highly recommend. One of the I think there's only 6 episodes, and one of them is about how Sweden is a hit factory for songwriters, right? A lot of the pop songs we know from the 90s, I Think Baby One More Time, I think it's Christina Aguilera songs, a lot of those catchy, earworm kind of songs were written by Swedish songwriters. And the whole episode talks about why Sweden, of all places, is cranking out American pop and doing a really great job with this earworm catchy songwriting. I was very surprised that they didn't talk about the socioeconomics that go into that. If you can make a living as a songwriter and you're not worried about being able to pay your bills, you're probably going to have more space to be creative. If you can make a living as a postman and not worry about, am I going to be able to worry about my health care or college for my kid, then you have time to be in a black metal band on the weekends and have time to be able to let your creativity run wild when you're not thinking about if you're one hospital bill away from, losing everything, right? I was really bummed they didn't talk about that because that's a huge part of it. It is very hard to be an artist in a city that doesn't seem to value these communities that have kind of made it an attractive place as kind of a marketing thing. I think we can all relate to that at some point, putting up a bunch of high-rises next to a music venue and then complaining about how loud it is. You moved to the neighborhood for the music venue. Or did you move to the neighborhood to tell your friends that you live next to the music venue? It's branding. Now we're going to get a little bit more personal, and not that it hasn't been personal, but personal. These 2 different bits have been my Facebook cover photos for a long time. I don't know what's on there right now. I don't really open my Facebook. It's a bad place. I'm not wrong. We have Etu Barada talking about, I am not exotic, I'm exhausted. I can relate to this very intensely. We have Mayra Wahid saying, all the women in me are tired. Most notably I hear that in Jamila Wood's voice because she repeats that line in a really great song of hers. How do you make art? How do you endure as a person, as a creative, imaginative citizen of this earth, if you are expected to endure things that are just seen as inherent to a person like you? We talk about things like the labor that mothers and women are kind of just expected to do in the home that are very feminized. How much room does a mother have to be creative if she is the one expected to go to work and also like take care of literally run the entire household, right? How much creativity can you produce if your rights as a human being are constantly under attack and you have to worry about surviving? You can't really think about your art thriving. I admire anybody who makes work from a place of pain, of struggle, because I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. I admire anybody who's coming from that place, because it almost seems like that is what you have to talk about because that's where your life is at, right? So many people, I want to know what so many people would be able to create if they did not have to endure things that society just expected them to endure, right? I want to know how my trans friends, this is again from Union Arts, are able to make so much art and bring so much creativity into this world when they are under attack for just existing. How do you wake up and decide to create? I admire that so deeply. How do you wake up and decide to create when people do not think you should exist, period? At what point is your own endurance a form of creativity, right? And sharing that. And how much do you share? How much of that belongs to you and how much of that belongs to other people? This is a photo I took at the DC Dyke March in 2021. It was really beautiful to be in community with other queer folks of color especially. And the theme for this march that is not corporate, that is not pride, not capital pride, I should say, that is not sponsored by anybody or anything. This year, that year in 2020, the theme was Dykes Against Displacement. Because that affects everybody, but it especially affects you if you are of a marginalized community. And the joy and creativity from that community that leads that march, I mean, that's like the coolest person I've ever seen. I kind of just want to say. I'm watching my drag friends. This is Molasses. Molasses was once again named Best Drag King in DC, like this year again. We love Molasses. This is like the best version of protest I could possibly imagine. And I don't know necessarily if Molasses is being political every time they put on a beard and a skirt and do the best drag I've seen in my entire life. Banshees happens at JR's every last Friday of the month. You should go. It's very late. I don't want drag things to start at 11 o'clock anymore. I'm 33. The way the existence and the creativity of so many folks has been politicized to stand up and in the face of that say, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep showing up. You want to talk about endurance? I think that's the one. I was in a band with a drag queen for a very long time, and everything we did was kind of attached to that identity, because people came, I want to see the drag queen band. And then they realized, oh, they have some songs. They have some things to say. They want to stick it out for a while. I am seeing so many drag performers just reach into themselves and find the most amazing creativity and expressions of this time, this pain, I feel like drag performers are like stand-up comedians. Like, I feel like you have to be really funny to be a drag performer, and I feel like the DC drag performers are like the most ruthless and funny of all of them. And it is just another way that you kind of have to laugh in the face of things to be able to endure sometimes. I threw this photo in, another one from the Dyke March in 2022, actually. I did not get this individual's name. I just kind of love that they have their weed and their testosterone vial in their earring. I think that's like the best thing I've ever seen. That is a level of endurance, again, I have so much respect for. And this is what that looks like. Like, this is kind of what the intersection of like pointing the camera at the crowd, pointing at the camera at the energy. When we talk about like we need energy from everybody involved to keep something going, this is what I'm talking about. Before I get into this slide, just a little bit, as a personal note, I really feel like I did not tap into my creativity until I was around 20 or 21. Because in 2016, when I was 16 and my sister was 12, we were stuck in Lebanon without our parents, visiting family in South Lebanon during the 33-day war. I can't tell you what puts more of a damper on creativity when you have to worry about surviving than war, when you have to worry about PTSD, perceptions of you, perceptions of your family in response to that. I have seen my people rise up and rebuild so many times. I come from a people who endure so much. I almost don't want us to have to endure anymore. I would really love us to be able to just live. And I have so much deep respect for people. Again, I know I've said this like 3 times. I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm also trying very hard not to cry. I have so much respect for folks who find it in themselves to still create during a time when they have to multitask with enduring and being creative at the same time. I need my notes for this one. So my friend Hanif recently shared with me the story that he found just digging around and looking for examples of music and counterculture and resistance. I've learned about the story of Momin Swayat, who was stuck in Jenin in the West Bank. I'm so sorry. Trying my best to not get super emotional right now, and I hope y'all understand. But it's okay if you get emotional. It's like totally okay to not be okay right now. So Momin Swayat lives in UK. He was stuck in Jenin in the West Bank during COVID. He comes across a cassette store that was part of his childhood. This is the kind of place that you feel like you've seen like a movie, right? It almost doesn't look real, like coated with cassette tapes, wall to wall to wall, like it's overstimulating. He talks to the shop owner, also learns that the cassette store functions also as a record label, puts out music. Oh, we have a huge archive upstairs. Really? Great, okay. He goes upstairs, 2nd floor, and digs through that archive. And according to The Guardian, he listened to 10,000 tapes over 8 months. And he found a treasure trove of cassettes from the 80s, including wedding music, funk, disco, and even recordings made by his own uncle's Bedouin wedding band. But the primary thing he found were cultural celebrations, some revolutionary. This specific tape had no cassette case. It had no track list. It had no label other than this one handwritten sticker. It says resistance. And he learned that this came out of the First Intifada. And the songs are about freedom. They're about mourning for the homeland. They're about celebrating the culture. They're about hope. And he learned later, the more he researched, that there were 3,000 of these tapes made, and they were all confiscated. It seems like such a small thing to confiscate. It's a cassette tape. It's like literally tiny. And the creator, Riyad Awad, who was a poet and a folk musician, who was making a lot of these music over like disco beats. Like it's really interesting to like just like very okay disco beats. Like you buy a keyboard and you hit like sample track 1. And this is what he was making this music over. Riyad Awad was detained and interrogated and tortured for 30 months because of mentions of things like throwing stones and claiming a homeland. I was listening to an interview Momin did talking about coming back through the airport in Jordan with 5 suitcases full of cassette tapes and the security being stunned, like, who listens to this band anymore? Like almost like clowning him for some of this music, like, oh, this is like some old folks stuff. This is whack. What are you listening to this for? And he took that whole suitcase of cassettes, took it home, and has been digitizing them and making them available online ever since. It is such a resounding example to me of taking pain, taking the literal act of enduring as like a culture, as a people, and making something beautiful and creative out of it that people can still listen to in 2020 during COVID, in 2023, right now in this moment, find relevant, find relatable, that continues to inspire people. I don't really have anything else to say. It is very hard to be creative right now. I have respect for everybody right now who is still like going to do not just work, but creative work and continuing to make and continuing to do. Because the capability to endure sometimes is an obstacle to what we're making, but sometimes is the very inspiration for what we are creating to begin with. So that's kind of all I have. But I don't know. Do we have time for like questions?
We have plenty of time for
Does anybody have questions? Does anyone want to talk? I'm kind of tired of talking. I walked in here like I understand Eminem and 8 Mile, like knees weak, arms heavy, mom spaghetti. But yeah, I would love to know if anybody has any questions or has anything that they would like to share on the topic of endurance as it relates to creating, creativity, existing, resisting, any of that. And don't be shy. And if you don't, that's okay. I'll just look at your beautiful faces. I appreciate that y'all are here this morning. It's too early. Hi.
Yes, I'm curious, what DC punk bands are you really loving right now, and you love going to their show that are still around?
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Did y'all know DC is so expensive? DC is like really expensive place to live in. That's crazy. I am not as tuned in right to what's happening in DC because once again, I am 33 years old. And punk is very much youth culture. One of the reasons punk is able to endure is because youth will continue to enter the culture and make it what they want it to be, to decide what it looks like in their generation, right? The punk youth culture that exists right now is a little different, you know, demographically especially, of the generation that Jim was photographing. Because DC got even more expensive during COVID, and a lot of these venues either could not survive or got shut down, there's only so many shows you can host that make no money because they're benefit shows, or everybody is straight edge or underage, right? Not very profitable for a bar. So a lot of punk bands and punks in DC who are making music here have really moved to Baltimore and Richmond because they're more affordable. So right now, Baltimore is actually like the East Coast epicenter for exciting bands right now. You have bands like End It, you have bands like Jive Bomb, for example, and there's like more new bands, A Truth Cult, you have more bands added all the time. In DC, I do love a hardcore band called Grand Scheme, and I'm really honestly like at a loss right now because to give you more details. Everything has flown out of my head right now. I did bring, could you hand me the book? I did bring a few copies of the photo book. So if anybody would like to take a look, anybody wants to, can I say if anybody wants to buy one?
You can say that.
I also have like if anybody would like to buy one, you can Venmo me. But this is my version of saying thanks for coming, we have merch in the back. But every page is labeled with the name of the band that you're looking at. So a lot of these bands, like a good chunk of these bands don't exist anymore because people age out. You make music and respond, like as a youth in response to what is happening around you, and then you continue to a different phase of your life, and the next generation kind of keeps it going. So I don't remember which bands in this book are still active, but there's still a good amount going on, and I'm not really worried that more punk has moved to Baltimore, Richmond, because I think the tides will kind of keep turning. People weave in and out. Think about how many kids come to this city just to go to school every year, right? Like, I know there's more bands coming. I appreciate that. I am sure they're going to fill more grocery stores, churches, basements, houses, student centers. What's the craziest place I've seen a show? Probably the grocery store.
Yeah, that feels right.
That was really cool.
And if anyone's looking for places to sort of find some of this music, I know Songbird has
Yes.
like an entire crate section dedicated to local bands
Yes.
and bands who have been local throughout history, not even just like bands in operation right now, but
Yeah.
you can find vinyls from, you know, probably from bands that Jim photographed
Yeah.
in the 80s, still
Yeah.
clean in the crates.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else have any other? Hello.
So you in the elevator, I just wasn't up earlier. So
Me neither. It's fine.
question, so what's your suggestions for like burnout or like being inspired? Like what do you do?
That's such a good question.
Because someone is broken, tired.
When I am feeling burnt out from my creative energy as far as photography, which is my primary thing, during COVID, I started art framing with my friend Meredith. She's out in Kensington. We frame art. I owe like 2 people in this room framed art, so please don't look at me too hard. I'm very sorry. But stepping away from photography and engaging in an entirely different medium helps me so much. Like there's only so long you can stare at a screen. There's only so long you can stare at a still image and continue to be like, if you know you hit a, first of all, you have to acknowledge that you hit a wall. You're not gonna help anybody. You are not gonna nurture your own creative practice. You're not going to help any people you're supposed to be in community with if you won't acknowledge, I have hit a wall, and take away any like shame or stigma associated with that. I cannot wait for the death of hustle culture. I think it's like very slowly going, but I had friends who used to make merch for their business that are like eyes wide, 365, like nothing to do, or that you think have nothing to do with what you do, really have been the best things for me to engage with. Like taking up like a craft for like, oh, I'm gonna like take this bouquet and I just got married. I'm gonna take this bouquet and I'm gonna learn how to cast it in resin and make like a thing or make like a tray out of it just because like I want to do something different, right? Like I spend so much time staring at a screen. I don't want to stare at any more screens. Oh, I'm gonna put the last slide up because I think it's fun. It's from like, I don't know if you have seen this video, but this guy is like in a club somewhere in the UK and he's asked like, did you just hear about like something about Al Qaeda or Osama bin Laden being captured, and he said, there's much pain in the world, but not in this room. He's at a nightclub. He's at like a rave. I appreciate this man so deeply in this moment. That was supposed to be the ending slide, so there you go. But even in the end of the world, you should probably go to the rave. You actually might get something out of it. Engaging in things I think I have nothing to do with, as far as I'm concerned, helped me so much. Trying my hand at something that is more tactile, like framing, like making a resin block, like, you know, crocheting or just getting myself out of my own creative zone and comfort zone is really where I find that. I think that's acknowledging it, acknowledging that you are approaching it, like learning what your own like nothing is like one size fits all. Like burnout is going to look different for everybody, right? I am very fortunate. I've showed you some of my punk photos, my drag photos, you know, protest photos. I also work a lot with like the restaurant community in DC. I think the reason, and I could have put so much of that into that, and I forgot that I do that because this week has been so hard. I'm like, oh yeah, I just talked about restaurants and during, that's crazy. That's a whole other conversation. But for me, I'm very grateful that my work incorporates so many different kinds of people who are so creative that I feel energized when I'm at the shoot. It's when I'm home, like in my lazy hoodie. Does anybody else have like a thing that they wear at home when like this is not something you leave the house in? I'm in my chair, like knees tucked. We're all like the whole thing is under the hoodie, and I'm just looking at these photos with my hood up and my Hydro Flask, and I'm like, I hate all of these photos. What did I even do today? But in the moment, I'm feeling very, very nourished by the people who I'm like in space with, working with, making art with, and having a variety of people I engage with really keeps me. It doesn't keep the burnout at bay, but it doesn't happen as frequently. And it just takes a little longer to reach me. But knowing what your own, oh, I'm heading towards burnout. Like, what are those signs for you as an individual? Figure out what that is. And when you are at that moment, just stop. Like, I used to work with a gelato shop in DC. That was kind of the beginning of like my creative journey in food in DC. And I would always say, like, there's not a gelato emergency. There's like no such thing. Like, things can feel very urgent and very intense, but as soon as you step away and be like, this is a photo of a drag. It's a photo of a drag show. It's fine. You can wait like a day more, and you're going to be okay. So, kind of having that reality check moment and like kind of stepping outside of yourself and going like, is this the emergency that I think it is? It's probably not. Like, abandon that urgency as best as you can when you can. Hell yes.
Well, first, thank you so much for sharing. I was not familiar with the punk scene here, so I learned a lot. I'm curious to know from that first picture that you showed us, when you were just beginning taking photographs to like where you are now, what was that process like of saying, hey, this was a hobby and an interest to, I'm actually an established artist, professional, creative professional in this space?
This is the artist thing I forgot to talk about. I have seen what I do for so long as just documenting, and I have not given myself the like permission to call it art, right? I think part of your work enduring is you telling people what it is and letting them also take their own thing away from it. But I wasn't calling myself an artist, and I did not see what I was like, I'm taking photos of my friends doing their thing. Except for that photo book, which came out right before COVID, like I wasn't making money at these shows. I was just going. And a lot of the time, unless somebody in the band or the venue really was like, you're great, you're fantastic, like don't worry about it, don't pay the cover charge. I was paying the cover charge. I'm like, that band drove like 3 hours in a van and they need to sell some merch and like find a place to stay tonight. I'll pay a $5 cover. Like I will pay to come take pictures. It was never my intention to profit off of punk. It was never like, I am going to make a career out of being a person who documents punk. This is like very personal work for me because I got tired of people talking about it in the past tense. And I do play music, but I have stage fright, as you might have noticed. So being in the position of documenting felt right to me. And I was so excited about the bands I was seeing. I wanted to make images that, if you missed the show, you kind of felt like you were there. You kind of understood the energy of the room. I would always rather have like kind of like a, not a perfect photo, like maybe it's not perfect composition-wise, maybe it's not technically, like technical capability, right, the best photo, but if you can feel something from it, if it's like that visceral, oh wow, okay, I see what's happening here, then like that's what I want to make out of my art. So it was never really a decision to be like, I'm going to be the punk photographer. It was very much just, you know, I want to practice and get good. And it was more affordable to do that in like a punk space with my peers who I already had a relationship with than doing it at like a bigger, more formal venue when you need a press pass and first 3 songs, no flashes, lots of rules. Did I answer your question at all? Yeah, it wasn't my intention at all. And I think if your goal is like profitability and not any kind of like it's fine to want to make money from your art. There's nothing wrong with that. That should not be a dirty word at all, like a dirty idea or like a taboo thing. Everybody should be able to make their career doing what they would like to do. But when it comes to this specifically, and this community and this scene not being about profitability, not being about commercial accolades or success, it did not make sense to me to try to ever say like, this is how I want to make a living. It was just personal. And I made my living through working with restaurants and bars, doing photos and social and creative direction and things like that.
Thank you for your time,
Yeah.
for your honesty, for your vulnerability, for your heart, for your work.
Thanks.
Love you.